In our headlines on this Thursday, April 9th, here in South Korea, there are signs of strain in the truce between the US and Iran, with Donald Trump threatening fresh military action if the ceasefire deal is violated, while Tehran says a safe passage for ships through the Strait of Hormuz may face, quote, technical limitations. And here in South Korea, presiding over his first meeting of the Nat'l Economic Advisory Council at the Blue House on this Thursday, President Kim Jong-un reiterates his calls for efforts to turn the current challenge to a chance for constructive change. Meanwhile, across the border, North Korea state media claims the regime this week tested a tactical ballistic missile tipped with a cluster bomb warhead that can reduce targeted areas to, quote, ashes. The Trump administration is reportedly exploring its options of pulling out American troops from NATO allies deemed to have, quote, failed the U.S. Our defense correspondent Kim Goyang explains.
The Trump administration has again expressed dissatisfaction with NATO for a passive response by members to the conflict with Iran. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said on Wednesday that President Trump believes NATO was tested and they failed.
They were tested and they failed. And I would add, it's quite sad that NATO turned their backs on the American people over the course of the last 6 weeks when it's the American people who have been funding their defense.
Leavitt's remarks online with a Wall Street Journal report that said Trump is considering a plan to punish some members of the NATO alliance, perhaps by moving some U.S. troops from member countries deemed unhelpful to those that were more supportive. The plan, although in early stages, is believed to have gained support among senior officials in recent weeks. The Trump administration is also reportedly considering closing at least one U.S. military base in Europe, perhaps in Spain or Germany. Leavitt also announced that President Trump is dispatching a negotiating team led by the Vice President J.D. Vance, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law Jared Kushner to Islamabad for talks this weekend.
The first round of those talks will take place on Saturday morning local time, and we look forward to those in-person meetings.
On Israeli attacks on Lebanon following the ceasefire announcement, the U.S. Vice President said Wednesday that the U.S. did not agree to include Lebanon, despite Tehran saying otherwise.
We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states.
Trump, speaking to PBS News, said Lebanon is not part of the ceasefire agreement because of Hezbollah, calling it a separate skirmish that will get taken care of. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And Israel's air raids against targets in Lebanon have prompted Iran to reportedly close the Strait of Hormuz again. But it has nonetheless mapped out alternative waterways. Our Cha Yun-kyung has details.
Iran has announced alternative routes for ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz, citing the risk of sea mines in the mine zone of the vital waterway. Iran's Revolutionary Guard suggested near Larak Island, and a statement released Thursday shared instructions for an alternative entry and exit route through the strait. Meanwhile, Iranian state media said Wednesday that Tehran has closed the Strait of Hormuz in response to Israel's continued military operations in Lebanon. Tehran had effectively blocked the key shipping routes since early March, sending global energy prices spiraling. Washington and Tel Aviv, however, maintain that the ceasefire agreement does not cover Lebanon, where Israel says it is targeting Hezbollah. On Wednesday, although the United States and Iran agreed to a 2-week ceasefire overnight from Tuesday to Wednesday, Israel launched its largest coordinated strike on Lebanon since fighting began last month. Lebanon's civil defense says at least 254 people were killed in the strikes, including 91 in the capital Beirut, and wounded hundreds more.
We are living in a nightmare, so I'm afraid today to sleep. So maybe it will happen this the second time. Who's gonna? I don't know. What? I will pray and then sleep. That's it.
Residents report that some attacks came without prior evacuation warnings. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
Against that backdrop of anxiety and uncertainty, we revisit the ripple effects of the recently reached ceasefire on the South Korean economy as industry insiders here remain cautious. Our Park Junan files this report.
Local markets here in Korea have seen dramatic relief. On Wednesday, the benchmark Kospi surged by 6.87%, followed by a minor drop of only 1.61% on Thursday. Although the market has rebounded strongly from its March low, it is still far from a full recovery. In energy markets, tension is cooling, but only slightly. We are seeing Brent crude and WTI pull back from their recent highs, but the so-called geopolitical risk premium hasn't fully evaporated. Traders remain hesitant to place aggressive bets on oil, as a mere 2-week window is not enough to guarantee long-term stability in the energy sector. Meanwhile, the Korean won has been under immense pressure, recently hitting a 17-year low of around 1,534 won to the dollar. While the ceasefire helped the won recover some ground, moving back under the 1,500 level, volatility remains high. Until a more permanent resolution is reached, the dollar will likely remain the preferred safe haven, keeping the won in a fragile position. Timing is also critical as the Bank of Korea is set to meet this Friday. The big question is whether this short-lived ceasefire changes the calculus for a potential rate cut. Even if oil prices stabilize for now, it takes time for that to be reflected in consumer prices, and so the central bank is expected to be wary of cutting rates too soon. For now, the market consensus is that the bank will likely hold the rate this Friday. Experts suggest that for a rate cut to happen, the war must end and supply chains have to recover to pre-war levels. Furthermore, South Korea's high household debt remains a crucial factor impacting the BOK's future decisions. The ceasefire has bought time to observe, but it hasn't solved the underlying inflationary pressure. Korean companies, especially in the shipping and refining sectors, remain in a wait-and-see mode. Regarding the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, a sea route crucial to the country's imports, there is still no guarantee of total normalization. Insurance premiums for shipping through the strait remain high, and logistics costs won't plummet overnight. For Korea's economy, the biggest risk to avoid is stagflation, a situation where growth slows while inflation persists. That risk is likely to continue until supply chain uncertainties are fully eased. Park Junan, Arirang News.
Staying in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung has highlighted yet again the importance of seeking to turn setbacks into stepping stones for constructive economic change. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
A threat, but also an opportunity. President Lee Jae-myung has again called for turning the challenge posed by the war in the Middle East into a chance to overhaul South Korea's economic structure.
이번 이 위기 국면도 모두가 변화를 받아들일 마음의 자세를 갖게 되기 때문에 실제 국정을 담당하는 우리가 잘 준비하면 또다시 이 국면을 기회로 만들어서 새롭게 도약하는 새로운 시스템을 구축하는 정말 좋은 계기가 될 수 있을 것 같습니다.
Lee made the remarks while chairing his first National Economic Advisory Council meeting at the Blue House on Thursday. Established in 1999, the council advises the president on economic policy. Lee and council members focused on what they see as two urgent tasks: securing energy supplies in the short term and reducing South Korea's long-term dependence on fossil fuels and on Middle Eastern energy routes.
We need to secure as much energy supply as possible during the 2-week ceasefire. Oil tankers should be deployed as soon as the Strait of Hormuz reopens. We also need to urgently secure crude oil and LNG from sources such as Russia and Iran, and bring in as much naphtha as possible from countries like China and Russia.
On speeding up the transition to renewable energy, the council stressed the importance of building technological competitiveness.
In the case of wind power, advanced countries are already developing and commercializing turbines of more than 15 megawatts. South Korea is still at around 8 megawatts. When it comes to utility-scale renewable energy, I believe offshore wind is one of the very few realistic options for this country.
President Lee returned to the same message later in the day at a weekly meeting with his top aides, reiterating the need to prepare for what he called a, quote, completely different world once the war ends.
The Blue House says the government will move to revise and develop related policies based on ideas discussed at Thursday's meeting. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
North Korea's state media claims the regime this week tested a tactical ballistic missile tipped with a cluster bomb warhead that can turn targets to, quote, ashes. Our Yoon-jin has more.
North Korea has test-fired a short-range surface-to-surface missile armed with cluster munition warheads as part of their continuous testing of various new weapon systems this week from Monday to Wednesday. This is according to the Korean Central News Agency on Thursday, which said the tests lasted 3 days and included demonstrations of anti-aircraft weapons, purported electromagnetic weapon systems, and carbon fiber bombs. This comes after South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff detected the firing of multiple launches into the East Sea from North Korea's Wonsan area at around 8:50 a.m. on Wednesday, followed by another launch at approximately 2:20 p.m. KCNA said the Hwasong-11Ka was a cluster munition warhead system mounted on the nuclear-capable Hwasong-11 ballistic missiles. They reported that the test confirmed that the missile can reduce to ashes any target covering an area of 6.5 to 7 hectares with the highest density power. This is an enhancement to the KN-23 family of short-range ballistic missiles, which resemble Russia's Iskander missiles in their design for low-altitude maneuverable flight to evade missile defense systems. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was not apparently present at the test site. The North's latest back-to-back missile launches come as Pyongyang reaffirmed its hostile stance towards Seoul, having called South Korea its most hostile state. While Japan's defense ministry said none of the weapons fired Wednesday entered its waters, and the U.S. military said the North Korean launches on Tuesday and Wednesday posed no immediate threat to the United States or its allies, diplomats from Japan, U.S., and Korea held a telephone consultation on Wednesday. Baek Yong-jin, Director General for Korean Peninsula Policy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, David Willazal, U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, and Otsuka Gengo, Executive Assistant to the Japanese Minister for Foreign Affairs, reaffirmed that North Korea's ballistic missile launches are a violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Yoon-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, a former U.S. national security official under the first Trump administration believes a summit between the U.S. and North Korea is in the cards this year. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young sat down with him.
A North Korea-US summit could take place this autumn, resuming top-level talks that broke down in 2019 over the terms of denuclearization. That's according to Fred Fleitz, former National Security Council Chief of Staff of the first Trump administration.
There's a lot of talk in the U.S. that there could be a summit in the second half of this year. I've seen signs that North Korea is interested in this. They want some kind of guarantees that denuclearization will be off the table. I've heard signs that they may want the Trump administration to recognize them as nuclear power. I don't think that's true. That's not going to happen. I can see talk with no preconditions, and then we try to get into the nuclear program. That's obviously going to be on the table.
While a Kim-Trump summit may be difficult amid the war in Ukraine, in which North Korea has been a major weapons supplier to Russia, Fleitz says there are positive signs that Pyongyang may be showing restraint.
The good news here is that there was an NIS report just this week that North Korea has not been helping Iran in this war because it wants to talk to President Trump. I think that's very promising. And I wish we'd hear reports like that from Russia and China, but if that's true, it's a very good sign.
On concerns among America's allies over security assurances, Fleitz said Washington stands firm on its promise of extended deterrence against North Korea, and that US troops in Korea are not being reduced. With growing talk of modernizing the alliance, Fleitz welcomed the bilateral push for Seoul to build nuclear-powered submarines, process spent fuel, and enrich uranium.
And I think the details of what was agreed to at the head of state level, this really needs to be hashed out quickly, because I think it's crucial for South Korea's security, also for American security.
Defining the Trump doctrine as reflective of what average Americans desire, not an isolationist foreign policy, Fleitz expressed confidence in support for the Korea-US alliance.
There's a very warm relationship between the United States and South Korea. It stems from the support of Americans who fought in the Korean War. My father fought in the Korean War, and my family has a strong relationship with South Korea. There's been some complaining by President Trump recently about Iran. This is not going to affect the fact that President Trump regards this as a model relationship. And there may be bumps in the road, but it's not going to undermine this crucial relationship between two strong friends and strategic allies.
Fleitz next month will release a book on the history of US policy on North Korea. Goyang, Arirang News.
And up next, we have some very exciting news for BTS fans out there as members of this K-pop sensation prepare to put on stage the first show of their Arirang World Tour. For details, I have my colleague Cho Young-eun standing by live at the venue of this concert. Young-eun, it's great to have you on. Let's start then with the atmosphere there in Goyang City.
Thank you, Sunny. I'm currently standing in front of Goyang Stadium just 2 hours before the first of the 3 concerts begin. Rain has been pouring in quite heavily since earlier today, yet it has not stopped fans from gathering here. Many have been waiting for hours and the excitement is building as the show approaches. After 4 years, BTS are back as a full group and following their comeback show at Gwanghwamun Square, attention has now shifted to here in Goyang. More than 120,000 fans are expected over the 3-day run, with the venue also drawing attention as the hometown of leader RM. The city of Goyang has already lit up the concert venue and nearby parks in BTS's signature purple, adding to the festive atmosphere. We also met fans, ARMY, from around the world earlier today about their excitement for the concert. Let's take a listen.
Trembling, like waiting all these years, expecting to come. We wanted to come for Busan for the last concert, but couldn't get tickets. But today we are lucky.
We have waited too long for this. She waited almost 10 years. I waited 9 years. So it's been a long wait, and we're finally seeing them. So it's like.
I'm currently waiting for Swim, and we got the album and everything at home. And hopefully I get to see JK up close, I wasn't able to see him back in Seoul. I was in front of a screen.
I sincerely hope he gets to see him tonight. Meanwhile, Young-eun, what more can fans expect from BTS's Arirang World Tour?
Right, Sunny, the tour will run through 2027, covering a total of 85 shows in 34 cities worldwide. BTS announced on Wednesday that it will add 3 additional dates of its Arirang tour in Latin America this October. So far, 46 shows in Goyang, Tokyo, and across major cities in North America and Europe have already sold out. For those unable to attend in person, the Day 2 concert on April 11th will be screened in theaters worldwide, followed by a Tokyo screening on April 11th. The group is also expected to perform new tracks from their 5th album Arirang, which topped the Billboard 200 for 2 consecutive weeks, along with their global hits. Member Jimin shared the message on the fan platform, asking ARMY attending the concert to dress warmly and promising that the group is preparing to put on their best performance. That's all I have from Goyang. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Young-eun, a very big thank you to you and the rest of Arirang's crew for braving the rain and wind to bring us this live report. And the station you're watching, Arirang TV, celebrates its 30th birthday this week, and a special ceremony took place at its headquarters on this Thursday to mark its past achievements and to share its future ambitions. Our Chung Hye-rim has this report.
Arirang TV marks a major milestone in 2026, celebrating its 30th anniversary. The foundation held a commemorative ceremony on Thursday in Seoul to celebrate. The event was attended by company staff and officials, including the second Vice Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism, Kim Dae-hyun, and the Secretary to the President for Foreign Press Affairs. A highlight of the ceremony was a congratulatory message from President Lee Jae-myung, emphasizing Arirang's role as a public diplomacy platform.
In an era of global cultural competition, K-content is expanding Korea's cultural reach worldwide. At the heart of this lies Arirang TV. Programs like last year's K-pop Demon Hunters special are proof of how the network captures the hearts of people worldwide.
Arirang's leadership also laid out a roadmap for the next 30 years, focusing on digital transformation and AI technology.
Arirang will continue to grow as a global media platform, building the future together with viewers around the world. Through digital transformation and AI technology, we will expand our connection with audiences and evolve into an innovative platform.
The anniversary celebration also offered a sneak peek into Arirang's future content. A mini talk show unveiled the new beauty program Beauty On and Off, hosted by Ishan and Wyatt of the boy group On and Off, as well as the new faces of Arirang's flagship music show Simply K-pop. Wonjin and Alan from Gravity joined the stage as the newly appointed MCs alongside TV personality Peter Bint.
I grew up with Arirang Simply K-pop in America, dreaming of becoming a K-pop idol one day. To return now as an MC is a dream come true.
While filming Beauty On and Off and doing interviews, I learned a lot about K-beauty tips and its significance. I realized how popular it is, especially to foreigners.
The ceremony also honored those who elevated Korea's global standing, including K-pop sensation BTS, who received a special merit award. From its humble beginnings to reaching 140 countries today, Arirang TV has spent 3 decades as the world's window into Korea. The network is ready to embark on a new journey. 정혜림, Arirang News.
We're seeing quite a bit of spring rain nationwide, which will continue through tomorrow afternoon before gradually easing off. Anywhere from 20 to 150 millimeters of rainfall is expected. The heaviest rain will be in the south of the country, with more than 250 millimeters in the mountainous areas of Jeju Island, more than 120 millimeters of rain along the southern coast. At times, there could be 20 to 30 millimeters per hour and around 50 millimeters per hour on Jeju Island. A strong wind advisory is in effect for the southern parts of the west coast and on Jeju Island. Meanwhile, dry weather alerts along the east coast of Gangwon-do province have been lifted as the rain moves in. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 11 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon at 10 degrees, Gwangju at 12 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 14 degrees. Daegu and Busan will all top out at 21 degrees. Once the rain clears, we'll get back to mild spring weather with a big day-to-night temperature difference. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Thank you for watching. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Do stay with us.